I got to chat today with Dan Brownsher. Dan has fast become one of my favorite people in the space, being one of the founders of Channel Key, a marketing/brand management agency focused on growing real brands on Amazon. He recently exited his business that he'd built over the last 14 years, I believe. And we talk about some really interesting topics. The guy is an absolute OG of the space and one of the good guys, really. So have a listen, tell me what you think, and most importantly, I hope you take some valuable insights from all the words of wisdom Dan had to share. Welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I talk to world-class professionals on what it takes to scale successful businesses. I dive deep asking questions to people who are running unicorn businesses, to raising funds, to buying businesses, mergers and acquisitions, IP and patent law, what is to manage performance management. I mean, the list goes on. The idea really is, how do I create knowledge and learning for you guys listening in? And of course, myself, getting the floor with people who I, in many cases, would never dream to share a room with. Before we jump into the episode, I've got to give a special thank you to our sponsors. Firstly, over at Global Wide Advisors, a leading digital consumer products investment bank focused on optimizing the sales process. An incredible team, always happy to pick up the phone and educate you or anyone about the sales process and what you should really consider, and can obviously help take you to market or even acquire businesses. I ring them for just about everything these days. Us over at Multiply Me, we are the end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, helping find better talent and onboarding them effectively. And last but not least, Escala, our management consultancy focused on process improvement, where we help build better systems for your business. That's all the ads you're going to get from me, ladies and gentlemen. The rest is all about learning. I hope you really enjoy and get as much out of these sessions as I do, sitting face to face with some of the world-renowned leaders in their respective fields, asking them the tough questions that they're not often asked. All right, Dan, mate, I am stoked to have you on an episode of Successful Scales. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Yoni. It's always good talking to you.
Mate, likewise. I feel like, we've gotten to know each other pretty well, pretty quickly, considering that we probably met in the last 3 months, I would say, properly. And it's been a long road for me. I told you I met Kristen 2 years ago. Never really got connected, and now we're here. And mate, just really excited to dig in. So before we do dig in and we talk about all the things that we both know and love, and that's about growing businesses and all of the opportunities that seem to, ensue when you start building that flywheel, I'd love you to tell those listening at home a little bit about your background and then what you're up to today, because even what you're up to today is super interesting.
Yeah, Yoni, happy to be here, man. And yeah, we haven't known each other that long, but it feels like we've known each other a lot longer. So we're, I appreciate everything that you're doing, and it's amazing to see kind of how active and you are in the space and in the network, and the growth that you're seeing as well. So happy to know you, man. It's an honor to be on the show, and I appreciate you having me. So my background. So currently I run a channel management agency called Channel Key, and we are supporting brand owners, manufacturers in the strategy development and execution of their businesses on Amazon.com and Walmart.com. And we've been at it since the early part of 2017, officially a fully remote company at this point. Domestically in the US, but also we've got staff all over the world at this point. So 40 plus headcount right now. And a relevant kind of pedigree conversation is we spun Channel Key out of an organization I co-founded with some friends from college called Trend Nation. And Trend Nation is a product-based business selling through marketplaces, primarily Amazon, Walmart, Target Plus, HomeDepot.com. And Trend Nation's been around for about 14 years. Has been a lot of things over the years. The constant is a seller of products and whether that isn't a distributor model or an exclusive distributor model, reseller model, or today, which is all private label. So that business owns brands and develops products and sells through marketplaces. So that's kind of the relevant background to where I'm at today. In essence, we saw the writing on the wall in the Trend Nation days back in really 2013, kind of 2014, that trying to compete trading commodities in essence on Amazon and selling it on price was not a business we felt was protected and wanted to be in. And so pivoted that business and felt that we could create a service-based model to help other brands create best-in-class Amazon businesses. So that's kind of the genesis. My background primarily is kind of business development. That's how my brain works. People, strategy, vision. That's usually how I approach things.
And it's very apparent to me why we get along so well, because all the things that I love, I think you love too, and get me into the deep into the details, and particularly the numbers. And you're probably going to lose me real quick. I don't know. I won't speak for you, Dan, but that's definitely me.
There's a point where this has happened. I become the bottleneck, right? And I'm getting in the way of the business growing. And that's my cue to get out of the way. So yes, sometimes the numbers are where that happens, and certainly process and structure in a lot of cases. So yes, Yoni, I feel you on that.
Totally. Promoting yourself to a state of incompetence, I think, is the framework or the term. And yeah, I've done that many times. But to your story, I think really, really interesting when you talk about Trend Nation. Matt, I'd love you to sort of break down that model, because I find it super interesting. And from a personal standpoint, it's one that I'm less familiar when you talk about sort of the distribution channels or the sort of exclusive distribution rights and things around that. Like, how you said you pivoted it, you wanted to move away from selling commodities on Amazon and the race to the bottom. So how did you what was the area that you saw as the risk there, without me putting words into your mouth? And then what was that journey like into pivoting? And then what does it actually mean?
No, that's a good topic. And Yoni, extremely relevant. If you're in the Amazon world today, and I guess for that matter, any kind of product business or distribution model, especially Amazon, it's relevant. So what we experienced was, it was really a progression, really in lockstep with the proliferation of Amazon. And so we started the business just really with the thought of saying, you know what, we believe in this e-commerce thing. At least this was my mindset. My partners might say something different. This e-commerce thing is interesting. We don't know where it's going to go. We believe it's a thing and we want to participate. And so it was really a side hustle to start. Let's just start sourcing products on Alibaba and selling them through eBay, right? Started on eBay. And we were sourcing different product types in certain categories and selling them through eBay. And then eventually we created websites, and, it kind of developed over time. And at some point we started, so that, I guess in essence, that was a private label business, right? We were sourcing goods and putting our logo on those products, sourcing it on Alibaba. Wasn't anything special or unique. We were just sourcing goods. At some point in 2010, we started attending trade shows in Las Vegas. Okay, that's where the business is headquartered. And we started buying brand name goods, brand name merchandise, okay, in various categories. But these are brands you'd find in a department store, Macy's or wherever. And very early on, started reselling that product on Amazon. Okay. And this was, again, 2009, 2010. So the early Amazon days, the early FBA days where it was less popular. And so the business exploded at that point. It exploded. It really, for something like 3 or 4 consecutive years, doubled. It's double. Team grew. We hired a lot of people. We hired a buying team. right? We were buyers at that point. So the buyers were in a specific category. They walked trade shows and their job was to buy merchandise. Okay. And we'd store it in our warehouse and we'd ship it to FBA and we'd ship it direct to consumer out of the warehouse. And that was going very well for a number of years. But what we saw happen is others caught on to the gig, right? Others figured it out. And so it became extremely competitive. And we were competing against other resellers like ourselves. And all we were doing at that point was competing on price. And so in the Amazon lingo, we were competing for the buy box. Okay. And so what we realized was that the LTV of the product got shorter and shorter and shorter. And so we were continually just chasing. We were chasing products, chasing SKUs, chasing margin. And it became a situation where we said, you know what, there's really not a moat around this business. It's not protected in any way. Now we're good at execution. We're good at selling through the marketplace, but the products we're selling aren't protected. And we don't control anything. And so when I say trading commodities, that's what I mean. We were competing on price. And so we said, okay, how do we create a controlled environment? And we said, why don't we go to these brands that we work with and say, hey, brand, let us be your exclusive distributor of this product on Amazon. And in exchange for that, we're going to, fix your content, fix your images. We're going to hold price. Okay. Because a lot of these brands in those days, their issues were, map violations or pricing issues. And it created a lot of channel conflict. So we said, hey, brand, let us cut you a PO, buy the product, store the product, ship the product. But we'll also hold price and we will fix your listings and try and create a representation of the brand that's more in line with your website or other channels. And so that was the strategy for a period of time. That was a pivot. And it worked for a period of time. And that was a focus. And we developed a lot of great brand relationships and it worked to a point. But we said, you know what, there's still a flaw in this model as well. Because we're buying the goods and it's incumbent upon the brand to be able to control their distribution. And if they can't, and there's gray market merchandise floating around the ecosystem, guess what? We bought the product and we agreed to hold price and we get stuck holding the bag. And so in a lot of cases, it didn't make sense. Or if the brand had a wide or long tail assortment, we didn't necessarily want to buy all the product. Like we just wanted to buy the stuff that moved. And in that model, in that equation, we can never clearly define who the customer was, right? Are we the customer because we're, cutting the POs and paying the brand, or is the brand the customer because they gave us an exclusivity and we could never figure it out? And so, and I don't know if that's kind of a really a root issue or topic that said that model didn't work for us. We just couldn't get clarity around it. So we said, you know what? The real way to win on Amazon is if you own the brand. You got to own the brand. You got to control the distribution. You got to develop the products. You got to control that entire experience. And so on the product side, we said, okay, let's do private label, right? Let's get back to private label. So that was the pivot. And then the other pivot was we said, let's create a service-based agency model to help other brands control their business because they own the brand. And service them through channel keys. So that's the genesis.
And on that, and this is like, I'm coming to you from a question where, I've been an Amazon seller. I'm now, I grew up as I grew up 10 years in creative advertising, digital marketing and agency land, moved to product. Now I'm back to service. And I sometimes question the decision, to be totally transparent. At the end of the day, I'm always accountable for, our clients' potential issues that may or may not crop up. And, it's kind of like, breaking back to the model of like, you are in control when you are the private label seller and you are manufacturing the product yourself and you are bringing it to market. It's kind of the same thing. I think when you're selling product versus being a service provider. What was the logic in moving into having both the service-based business and your own product at the same time? Why not double down on one or the other?
A lot of that, I think, Yoni, was just a personnel decision, right? It was an opportunity decision and a personnel decision. right, is who do we have on the team and what opportunities do we have in front of us? And do we believe there's an opportunity to really double down on the Amazon ecosystem with two different business models? And so I would say, you know what, we actually did double down. We did double down. We actually created an entirely new business based upon what we learned. And with the belief that we felt Amazon was on a rocket ship and it wasn't going anywhere. And so there's a lot of ways to kind of participate in an ecosystem like that. And so I would say we actually did double down, right? And we said, okay, we're going to go left and right simultaneously, and participate in a more deep way with the channel.
How many partners are you guys?
There's three of us.
Okay. I mean, I'm always trying to think as well, like, going back to the genesis of the show, Successful Scales. For me, I started it because I was really always trying to learn from people who had been there and done it before. And, one of the things that's always an interesting consideration is like, what's the DNA and the skill set of the team that's actually driving the business forward? And so having three people, like, what's the breakdown of the skill sets?
It's funny. So, and I think that's, you're getting to the part of the heart of the matter here is, my other two partners are good. One's very technical and one is very, very much a visionary and a kind of a CEO type. They're very much good at the product business. Okay. My skill set is less aligned with that business type, unless we're creating partnerships, right? And trying to create strategic relationships. And so for me, it was more of a natural fit to be on the agency side because it's very much service oriented, partnership focused, and building relationships with brands and vendors. And that's, where I feel most comfortable. So if I didn't have that personality type, we might not have created the agency, right? If I was a coder, developer, or a merchandiser or something like that, then we probably wouldn't have done it. But based upon who we were and where we were at that moment in time, and what we all felt we were good at, that's what made the most amount of sense.
Yeah. And I think, just the way you're even outlining it, and one of the things that has definitely rung true through, a lot of the conversations that I've had over the last several years is having that dynamic. You've got someone who can build the relationships and be single-minded and focused on how do I attract the right partners and how do I drive that forward? How do I build the vision and, as a second independent person and drive the direction? And I'm assuming the third team member or partner very operationally savvy, if I had to guess.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
And it's like, it's just the winning, it's the winning trifecta. And that's like one thing that I've really learned to be true is that you have to have, it's like the COO, for example. I think it is the most underrated, highest value skill set that any business could ever have. And it's the difference between, doing $1 million and $100 million is someone who can really sit and build that process and tell the visionary that, 99 of those ideas are absolutely terrible. Do not go down that path. But that one that we can do something with. And I think, just having a dynamic like that is effectively what likely allowed you to scale and build both Channel Key and, and the brands or the platform as you defined it before we hit record. And I really want to dive into that because 14 years, you said you started building the brand Trend Nation.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is a long time when you talk about everything that you and I hear about all the time about aggregators, the acquisition of brands that, they've been around for 2 years, multiples of 4 and 5 on trailing 12 EBITDA. And, it's becoming like, that's becoming the speak. So 14 years having pivots, going through this journey, also having an agency, testing methodologies with other clients, having that mass appeal and exposure and that ability to really learn. Like, I also think that it's very smart to have the service business too, because right? People are paying you money, so you can't fuck it up, right? But the reality is you still get exposure into different verticals and different experiences. I mean, you told me before we can talk about the topic, but again, congratulations for selling Trend Nation, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Yoni.
So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about that journey, because again, a lot of people listening in, they're probably considering, or if they're not, they should be looking at what it looks to take chips off the table and exit their business. And, this is like the golden age. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the decision, the mindset, the direction, like why now? What was the opportunity? And, how did that all come to be?
Yeah. So let's see. It was certainly a journey, right? It's certainly been a journey. And, in full transparency, my partners operate that business. So I'm not in the day-to-day. I'm solely focused on operating Channel Key in the agency and kind of managing my team and working with our clients. So, what I'm speaking to is just kind of my perspective from some, not necessarily from the outside in, but I'm not, wasn't intimately involved with, some of the proceedings. But
surely, just before you jump into it, what you're doing inside of Channel Key is it's an invaluable factor in the ability for them to be better operators. Surely there's some sort of, I hate using the word synergy, but there's some sort of cross-pollination of this is what's working inside of Channel Key when we talk about PPC management or listing optimization or creation, or how we're approaching, whatever it is, driving traffic off of Pinterest into Amazon, whatever it is. Like, surely there's a relationship there that's helping propel that business forward.
Yeah, there's learnings on both sides, right, that are extremely relevant. And whether it's a specific strategy, or whether it's a software type, or a way to aggregate data and pull it into a dashboard that's really effective and efficient, there's a ton of information that can be leveraged that is very relevant in both businesses. And so we learned stuff from the product business, and they learned stuff from us. Now we don't share data, right? But strategies, ideas, partners, vendors, multiply me. Like, that's a potential resource, Yoni, that that business could use, or any other business for that matter that I'm familiar with. So yeah, there's a lot of potential crossover there. And that's where we cut our teeth. I mean, we Channel Key cut its teeth by running a product business, and we made all the mistakes, right? We made all the mistakes, so theoretically our clients don't have to, right? And so that's the learnings were there from the start, and Channel Key wouldn't be Channel Key without Trend Nation. But what's interesting is both businesses are different. They're separate, and they're different. It's a different culture. It's a different team. It's a different mindset. And it's a different approach to the way the businesses are run. And on the agency side, we work with a lot of brands. Some of them are small and some of them are really big. And we see how they operate. We see what their staff and team structures are like. We see what sort of resources they have in place and what sort of tech they use, and the challenges that are going through with, implementing a new ERP or business process. Like, we see all that. And certainly, I see it on the Trend Nation side as well. Some of the issues they have, and they're different, right? They're different. And the relationship between the founders, and how the business is capitalized is really interesting too. And so, back to your earlier question, it's a lot of it's a risk equation. Okay, so why did Trend Nation decide to take on a partner now? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. The space is really hot right now. It's with all the aggregators and the institutional money coming in, like, it's a really interesting time. And there's a lot of interest in what we're doing, both on the agency side and on the product side. But there's also what a lot of people don't realize is to run a product business, and to try and capitalize that business, it's very intensive. And how are you getting capital, right? How are you funding inventory purchases? Just because you make $10 million a year in sales doesn't mean you make 10 million, right? And a lot of people don't understand that. And you've got to, if you want to keep the train on the tracks, you got to redeploy that capital. And hopefully there's enough left over for everybody to, pay themselves a fair wage and, live a decent lifestyle. And so at some point, if the opportunity is right, you want to de-risk, and not necessarily leverage your entire personal asset, your personal assets and your family's future, on buying inventory, and say, you know what, like it's time to maybe take on a partner and try and grow this thing even bigger and better and faster. And so that's part of the equation, is just at some point it starts to make sense. You build a business for that long and you capitalize it for that long yourself. At some point when the time is right, it makes sense to kind of take some chips off and take on somebody that can help you go even faster. And so that's, a really big part of the equation.
Yeah. And I think for those listening in and, sort of thinking through that equation, like the de-risk factor, especially when the market being as hot as it is, like, yeah, that 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, whatever number, when people are talking about revenue, which in my opinion is the wrong number to be chasing. And it's usually, it's usually the yardstick of like, we're a $20 million business, we're a $10 million business. Like, what is
it's a vanity metric?
It's an absolute vanity metric. Like, okay, $10 million business means more headcount, means more employees, means, more risk, more investment in inventory, means finding growth capital, means like, more shit can go wrong effectively.
Yeah, 100%.
And when you fuck up, it can be a huge, like, catastrophic mess. And, you're not talking about like, cool, it's, 10 grand here and 5 grand there. You're talking about serious money here. And, you're talking about being a guarantor to a business and, putting it all on the line. So I think, for people getting to that point where, they have the opportunity to de-risk. And, the reality is as well, there's nothing stopping you from going again. You could go and build another product-based business tomorrow, probably not directly competing with it. But, you could build a product-based business as well, taking all that knowledge. You go again, you probably do it better the next time as well. Realistically, you're not going to make the same mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. And, at the end of all of that, there's people. Right. And so, you've got chips on the table, but guess what? You've got a lot of employees and you've got, there's a responsibility there. And so, it could, in a lot of cases, create more opportunities for your people, but certainly also for the founder and the founder's family as well. So, it's certainly a money and risk equation, but you also can't forget about the people that got you there, so, yeah, it's interesting.
100%. Well, we were talking a little bit about what that exit looked like for you, and it sounded like it was a pretty interesting structure. And, I think as well, the whole notion of this show, I've got Trend Nation on the brain here, is, education, right? So you don't have to go the, cash on close exit strategy. And a lot of the aggregators actually have sort of the stipend on the back end where you get like a performance bonus on the back. But to me, it sounds like you have a more interesting deal structure. Would love you to sort of break down, if it's cool, a little bit about what that's like, and also like the rationale behind it and what that means for you moving forward.
Yeah. So Trend Nation lives on. And it wasn't a scenario where, the founders were kicked out and said, we don't need you anymore. The intention here was, it was a very strategic situation where, we didn't sell all of it. We sell most of it. And the idea was that my partners would stay on and operate and continue to drive the business forward under new guidance and, leadership with a new strategy and structure. And so, to your point, a lot of the, the aggregator transactions are you're just cashing out and you're done, right? You're done. And maybe there's some back end or something like that. But in other scenarios, and this is not, limited to, the Amazon space or the aggregator spaces, a lot of business types, is the founders stay on to keep operating and to build something even better and even bigger, because the management team is so strong, the processes and the infrastructure is so strong, that the founders stick around and keep running the business. And so that was more in line with what happened with Cremation. So it's quite honestly really exciting, just to think that, the work that was built primarily by my partners over the years is going to be built upon and could create something much larger and much more impactful. So that's just what we experience. It's more of a platform to add and create more, as opposed to just a selling of products or a trademark or a handful of ASINs or a seller central account or something like that. It's much more long-term based and kind of strategic in a sense. So that's what we experienced.
And on that note, and even just sort of breaking it down further, when I'm hearing you sort of explain the breakdown of the deal, you've got your awesome partners who are now operating it with new guidance at a more strategic level because they're bringing in the right people. And, if I've learned anything over the years, it's all the strength of the company is based on the capability of the team. It's always about the people. Yeah. And so when you sort of put a couple of superpowers together and you continue to build that, that human capital infrastructure, some magic happens. And so from where you're sitting, this is effectively, a crazy notion. I have no idea about the numbers of what you sold for and how much equity you have left in the business. But, sure, just thinking through what that actually means, that's how you create real wealth here, because you now, as an original founder of the business, have, effectively a relationship that is like an investor in the business, and one that's now been given all of the resources. And I don't know what the long-term reality is, whether that business then goes on to list or sell or change hands again, whatever that looks like. But that in itself might be worth more than the exit value that you've seen today, depending on the growth. And that is just a crazy thing to think about, that you've taken it to a point. It's now going to grow, outside of, your sort of realm of direct impact and consciousness. And it might be more valuable in their hands after what you've done than it ever was. It's just crazy.
Yeah, Yoni, it's for me, I never really considered it. I never even thought about it that way. We didn't build the business to that wasn't the end game, right? But it just kind of happened because of the scale of the business and the strategic partner that came in. So yeah, it's very possible. It's very possible that the thing could go on and just, who knows, right? If it doubles, triples, quadruples, gets another injection of capital, acquires more businesses, it could be anything at that point. And so yeah, the first transaction, to your point, might not be the last transaction, and the second or the third or the fourth or whatever it may be, they could never happen, right? Nothing could happen, or it could be a lot larger. You just don't know, but certainly the opportunity is there. And the capital and the people and the infrastructure is going to get better. And so, assuming there's good execution, which I have no doubt there will be, and the market stays where it's at for a period of time, which I don't see it slowing down anytime soon, it could start to get really interesting for sure.
Yeah. And I think, to your point, like, you've effectively hedged your bets. You get a solid payout, I imagine, 14 years. Like, I've really got to look at this stat because it's coming up more and more now where people are holding on to businesses for a long time. But like, I think it's like 5% of businesses break that 10-year mark. It's like a very small percentage. So
it's very small.
So you're in this like really small percentile of where you've taken it to. You've taken chips off the table. You're in a more financially stable and secure position, and you now have this thing that's like, it could go through the stratosphere, even if it went bust, which it doesn't sound like it will. You've planted the seeds that are really going to allow you to accumulate wealth, not just make money. And I think like if there's one thing that I'm starting to learn is that how do you be extremely focused in what you're good at and then be able to leverage other people's, unique talents and expertise for them to drive forward and then sort of grow this entire pool as a collective. And that, that's sort of we were talking before we hit record before, but for me, like the whole notion of an incubator model, investing in founders who are as hungry and as passionate as guys like you and me, that if you deploy resources in and you can add the value to them and vice versa, then that becomes this beautiful partnership where together you're just better. And I think, it sounds like this sale and the deal structure is exactly that.
Yeah, it's got certainly a lot of runway, Yoni. It's got a lot of runway and a lot of great opportunities. So, it's exciting. And I think of it too, to your point, kind of this ecosystem and or incubator model. It feels to me very much like compounding assets. Okay. So just, think about a stock account or a securities account, and acquiring more of that over time, right? Acquiring more securities or more assets, or whether it's real estate or whatever the case may be, it's an asset. And those things individually can be great. But together, they compound they can compound in a really big way. And you can start to leverage all of it together and leverage other elements to feed other elements of that pool. And it becomes really interesting. And so, these are partnerships, these are businesses, these are assets, these are, and so I kind of, if I'm thinking very kind of black and white and financially minded, like it's a great asset with upside, certainly there's a lot more behind that. There's relationships and people and business and structure and all these things. But if you got a lot of horses in the race, things will hit and some things won't hit. And then the things that hit, you leverage and you go deeper or you go wider. And that's what I'm learning too. And as a part of this is, it can be very powerful. Not only from a relationship perspective, but financially very powerful if you structure and set up things the right way.
Absolutely. And I can't believe I'm looking at the clock and we've already gotten to the top of the hour here. I don't know if you're going on the meeting now, but mate, before I let you go, I mean, I'm loving every minute of this. And I just think, it honestly, it just solidifies like why when we met the first time and, over what feels like, I feel like I've known you my whole life, but really it's been literally 3 months. We've just happened to speak and see each other a fair bit in this.
I'm coming to visit you in Tel Aviv. I'm coming.
100%. I'm actually trying to tee up some sort of seller summit here, maybe in May next year.
Count me in. Barring any crazy pandemic, I would love to come out. So
we're gonna make it happen. But before I let you go, anyone who's listening in, anyone who's the perfect profile to be working with Channel Key? What's the best way to get in touch with you? I would love you to give Channel Key a bit of a plug. And just from my personal perspective, I've spoken to a number of the team. I've loved hearing absolutely everything that you guys are up to there. And, I'm pretty critical having come from that space. And like I said, really impressed with everything you guys have going on. So, I'll let you take it away. How do they get in touch?
Yeah. So you can, go to our website, www.channelkey.com, which we're relaunching here, hopefully by the end of this week. So we're quite excited about that. Follow me on LinkedIn. I post, I comment, I am active on that channel. And in general, Yoni, and I could talk for days about this topic around kind of building an agency and structuring an agency and what happens as you grow and scale. But for us, we work with brands, with brand owners, manufacturers, and we like We're typically kind of in the small, medium-sized business space. So, Amazon accounts that are, 1 million plus. And we're operators. We're full service operators. So we don't just do ads. We don't just do content. We're full service. So we've got analysts and we've got graphic designers and copywriters and account managers, and we really wrap our arms around our clients' businesses and become their team, their outsourced team to run things. And so, we take on earlier life cycle clients that are kind of launching. Maybe they're D2C and they want to activate on Amazon, and some that are very far down the life cycle that just need a higher level of sophistication or need a change or want a new strategic business plan. So that's kind of our approach. And in general, we're really selective in who we work with. And we do a lot of heavy lifting and research and due diligence on the front side to try and even understand if we feel like we can move the needle. And this is growing an agency and learning this the hard way is the client fit with the agency is one of the most important things to creating a kind of long-term partnership, which is our goal. And so we try to get it right the first time on the front side, very much heavily focus on strategy and business planning, and then execution on the back end. So if you're a brand or interested in this, you should come talk to me. We'd love to talk to you.
And I'd say that's great. I'd also say if you're only listening in, Dan's got a real face that you can trust. So if you're watching, you'll see it. But I mean, just to really, I want to say personify that. I don't know if that actually makes sense. It's late here. It's just after 10 p.m. and it's been a long day. But any business that's going to take that approach where they do the heavy lifting on the front end and actually vet you and say, you're actually not a right fit for us as a client. Like that is, for me, those are the partners that I'm looking for, where they, like with Multiply Me and Escala, there's no long-term lock-in contracts. If you don't like the solution, then, it's got to work for both parties. And I think that level of upfront work, that commitment, I mean, it really just speaks volumes about you as an individual and Channel Key as a business. So, I could go on and keep plugging Channel Key, but I think you guys have got the point here.
You're doing great. You're doing awesome.
I'm looking for a job. Dan, seriously, it's been awesome having you on. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day. And mate, I look forward to seeing you again in the flesh, if in Israel, or hopefully I'll probably be in the US again this year. So we'll definitely have to reconnect.
Yeah, Yoni, it's a pleasure. Honor to know you. What you're doing is really impressive, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And hopefully I can help along the way and be a resource. So appreciate you having me on. Love to come back and do it again if you'll have me, and look forward to seeing you again.
Anytime, mate. Thank you very much.